today we're going to be focusing on the ACT phase, which is the third phase in the challenge-based learning framework. And in the ACT phase, students' teams really work together to synthesize what they've learned from the engage and the investigate phases, and then develop actions that work towards a solution to their essential question within the community. So in the ACT phase, it's important that before students are starting their action, they have completed the investigate phase and they've had a chance to answer their guiding questions. It can be really tempting for students to want to just start an action right from the beginning, that they just want to get working on something. But the engage and investigate phases are really important for students to gather information, to learn about the community, the needs, what's already happening, and then to help them design impactful and sustainable actions for their communities. So in the ACT phase, students are going to develop an action concept and then take action towards a solution. And those solutions should be evidence-based, based on the evidence gathered during that investigate phase. They'll be implemented with an authentic audience, will likely be iterated upon, and then will be evaluated based on your results. So we've designed a template for writing action concepts that have 3 parts. And this isn't the only way for students to write an action concept, but we do find that it's a helpful structure for students. So in this template, the action concept goes in order to blank. I or we will use blank to create blank. So in this case, students have a goal, something that they want to do. They have some sort of tool that they're going to use or method they're going to use to achieve that goal. And then in the end, they're going to have some sort of output, right? They're creating something that's going to work towards that goal. And so when students are writing their action concept, they don't need to have a specific app or program in mind that they will use. You can say something general, like I'm going to design an app, right? You don't need to say I'm going to use MIT App Inventor, right? It really is a chance for students to start thinking about what's the big picture thing that I'm going to do, and then they can dig into what that looks like. And we have a set of action pathways, which I'll share a little bit more about later in our webinar, that have suggested tools for students to use. I want to share a few action concepts from teams that participated in the challenge last year to give you an idea of what this might look like. So one of our teams that participated from Canada had the action concept, in order to increase awareness of invasive species spread, I or we will use multimedia messaging to create a public service campaign. Another team from Uganda shared their action concept, in order to reduce poor plastic waste disposal and tree cutting, I or we will use a hands-on sensitization campaign and website to create awareness of the dangers of poor plastic disposal and cutting trees. And the last example is from a team in the United States, and their action concept was, in order to assist consumers in making smarter food purchases, eat healthier, and minimize food waste, I or we will use MIT App Inventor for Android to create an app solution. So as you can see, these 3 action concepts have different levels of specificity. Some of them name a specific tool like this one, but some of them don't. But all of them kind of follow this pattern. And so the students are able to kind of think through, what is the big concept of what I'm going to do? And that gets them started on their ACT phase. So once you have an action concept, your team is then going to prototype, maybe implement, do some testing and evaluating. And as we'll hear later from our guest speaker who's going to join us, there's always a little iteration that happens. The first plan is usually not the last plan, because you'll get feedback from the audience that this is meant to support, because a new idea will come, because there might be a challenge that you hit that needs to be overcome. So there's definitely a need to create an action concept, but then be open and flexible to where it goes and the changes that are needed along the way. So here's what the whole process might look like. The challenge that students are examining might be, how can we make it safer for the elderly to live at home? So students might have noticed that in their community, there's a lot of elderly individuals who are living on their own in houses, and they want to do something to make that safer for them. And in the investigate phase, they learned that a common danger for the elderly is falling, and seniors in the community tend to remain in larger homes even after their families have moved out. So they might write the action concept based on these learnings that in order to improve fall safety, I will use design software to create a floor plan to reduce the risk of falls. So using that same structure that we just talked about. And so the team creates a prototype, they get it all ready, and they go to get some feedback. They go to talk to seniors in their community and find out that what they designed is really actually difficult for the audience to read because of the text size. And some of the seniors from the community that they talked to felt it was really only relevant for people who were living in single family homes, but they themselves lived in an apartment. So based on this feedback, your team might go back and do some iteration. They might learn about how to design for visual accessibility and then remake the floor plan with that in mind. And also learn more about the needs of seniors who are living in apartments, and then create a supplemental floor plan. So there's one for single family homes and one for apartments. So I wanted to share this because I think it nicely kind of shows what the ACT phase can look like. But we know that it's great to hear from someone who's actually done it. So today we are joined by Poonam Gupta, who's a teacher at City Pride School, and she's going to share her team's challenge. I'll let her introduce herself and the challenge that her team selected.
Hello everyone, this is Poonam Gupta from City Pride School, Pune, India. At the very outset, I would like to thank Team Ciena for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be a part of highly enriching Challenge 2021-22. Now to answer to the question as to how did my students decide their action pathway. To begin with, I asked my students to write an essay, or rather a paragraph, on sustainability or sustainable development goals. Then the top rankers emerged and we asked them about of their willingness to be a part of this endeavor, because this required their extra time and effort. And hence the team of enthusiasts was formed. And I also kept that in mind, that these students, or at least some of those students, must have adequate computer literacy, including the knowledge of coding. Then the further roadmap of Ciena Solutions challenge was distilled from using the resource library, and a detailed orientation program was conducted for the students, followed by a brainstorming session as to what would be their big idea. And so we made a matrix containing 4 quadrants. It was a kind of an Excel sheet wherein the children listed their ideas, and those 4 quadrants were whether the big idea is actionable, unique, sustainable, and impactful. So we tried to measure its degree, whether it is very high or medium or very low. And in that, the idea of inclusion of differently able students stood at the highest. And then further, this idea was deliberated and unanimously decided by the team members. So hence the big idea of inclusion of differently abled students firmed up.
So if you want to know more about the team's challenge overall, I encourage you to check out their example challenge builder. It's available in our resource library, which I'll share in a couple minutes. And it really details their entire process that the team used when really focusing on increasing inclusion within their community. So you just heard Poonam speak specifically about their initial engage phase to determine their big idea and focus their team on an actionable, unique, sustainable, and impactful project. So they went through this process that she just described to come to their big idea. And then from their big idea needed to move into their action phase. And that focus on actionable, on unique, on sustainable, and on impactful continued throughout the remainder of their project and into their action pathways, which we're going to learn more about today. The team utilized the Ciena Solutions Challenge Resource Library to help them throughout the challenge, including in developing their action concept. So I'm going to let Poonam share a little bit about how they use the library, and then I'll share it with you.
We went through the entire resource library given by Ciena Solutions, and we got the roadmap of the project actually from there only, and the idea of developing the app and the website came from there. And when we went through the other projects which were all given in that resource library, we found that some of them worked towards the development of the community. We gathered our inspiration from them and we started our work.
So let me walk you through the library a little bit so you can see some of the resources that Poonam's team used. First, the resource library is at cienachallenge.org, our website, and all you need to do at the very top is click Resource Library to get in the website menu, and that's going to take you to this landing page that we've created to try and help point you to the right places that you might want to go. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of that library guide, action pathways are one of the activity types. And if you click on that link to action pathways, it's going to take you into the library with filters turned on so that you can see the action pathways. So this is what the library looks like. Right now, as you can see on the left side, there are some filters that are turned on. These filters will filter language, challenge phase, and activity type, so you can easily find specific resources. So right now, because you might have clicked on that action pathways choice specifically, it's showing only the action pathways, but there are other ACT resources. So one great resource to support students is our Sparking Lot and Action Concept Development Guide. So as I mentioned earlier, it's really easy for students to start coming up with actions right from the beginning. They get so excited, they want to do great things in their community. And so we've developed a sparking lot for these sparks or ideas so that students can take the idea, can write it down and park it there so that later they can compare it based on the evidence they gathered, what they learned in their engage and investigate phase, and see, is this a great idea for us to run with? This resource has both the sparking lot as well as a page kind of guiding how to think through those sparks and turn them into an action concept. Another chance for reflection and documentation of ideas that we have is both the action phase synthesis, which you see here on the left, and the student challenge the challenge synthesis on the right, which are both from the student challenge organizer. And these are developed to help students reflect about what they've done and move through the steps, thinking about what they've learned throughout the process. And then, as I've mentioned a couple times, we have action pathways. So we have a set of 15 different potential action pathways that students could use to take action within their challenge. And I really want to emphasize these aren't the only ways to take action. And you'll see that the City Pride team took action in a way that's not one of these 15 pathways, but they are a really great starting place. And some of our educators we've worked with have found it really helpful to use these action pathways to provide ideas for students and guidance for them, as well as to provide some limitations at times. So maybe providing just 5 of these and saying, you know, your team can pick 5 of these in order to meet certain learning goals that you might have, or to support students that struggle when they're given too many options, giving them a smaller subset to choose from while still ensuring they have agency to make decisions within the challenge. And for each of these action pathway documents, we have guides for the students that really work through their action concept. So there are tool guides here, there are examples, and then there are kind of step-by-step processes. And these aren't meant to replace you as a teacher, but they're meant to support you as an educator, because you might have multiple teams doing multiple things. And so this allows students to start working through and thinking through the different action pathways, the different tools they might use, and then consult with you as they're really building out their action. One great resource is the Challenge Builder, and you saw earlier the example Challenge Builder that the City Pride team had completed about their challenge. The Challenge Builder is available for you to use as well, to think through the different phases of the challenge and how they build together and what you've learned. Specifically, there is a section at the bottom for the action pathways and for the ACT phase. And so what this allows students to do is think about what is our action pathway, importantly, to justify why this action pathway is an effective one for their audience. So thinking through why they're picking that action pathway, not just because I want to create a 3D object, but because having this 3D object is going to do something for the community I'm hoping to reach. And then to think about, once you have an action concept, how am I going to connect and share this with my community once it's created, and how I'm going to scale and sustain the work. So not only getting partway, but keeping it going within your community. So again, here's the example from the City Pride team. And in the ACT phase, their team had 3 different actions. They conducted integrated activities with students from their school and from a nearby center for students with disabilities. They created an app and they developed a website. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Poonam to explain how these actions are based off of the needs identified by their community, and specifically teachers and students from CHEP.
So after having decided that we would work for our children who are differently abled, we inquired about a few schools around our vicinity and came to know about JAPE Rehabilitation Center, which is approximately 3 miles away from our school. We went to the school and met the principal and expressed our willingness to do something for these differently able students, and she was very happy. She expressed her she agreed, actually. She promised as much support from their side. And then we interviewed all the stakeholders, like the doctors, the physiotherapists, the counselors, the teachers, all of them, and the parents of these specially abled children. Then a few salient observations were made, and we came to know that there wasn't any such app which dealt or which gave instructions to such children in vernacular language. There were many apps available to help these children to learn, but not in their vernacular language. So this was the idea, hence the idea of an app came. And then a website, because the parents said that we do not have any such place wherein all the information about the doctors, the different centers which could deal with these children can be looked, and hence the idea of this website came. And we also understood that since there were a lot of prejudices and biases in society, so we thought, why not bring these children into our school premises and expose them with our school infrastructure and use our resources to help them, or to identify their skill sets and try to hone them.
So every student experience is going to be unique, but we also asked Poonam to share a bit about what her students experienced as they completed these 3 action pathways.
Students were earlier, in the beginning, they were a little skeptical and they had to develop a lot of patience, but over a period of time they developed sympathy, and as they were just about to close one of the action pathways, it turned out to be empathy, and they developed a great sense of satisfaction, a sense of purposeful mission.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's likely that your team isn't going to get things exactly right on the first try. It's going to take some iteration, some trial and error, to find the right action pathway and to be successful as you take action. And that's okay. I'm going to turn it over to Poonam to explain some of the challenges that their team made and how those challenges actually led to a more beneficial end and action for their project.
Students were initially, we wanted our staff members, like educators who dealing with arts, music, sports, to visit CHIP Rehabilitation Center and impart them training. But despite best efforts, we could not match the timings or the convenience of these teachers. And then later on, we realized it was a blessing in disguise, because then the idea of bringing these children to our school came up. Then we could use our infrastructure, and also when the children from TAPE, they entered our school premises, we could see a broad smile on their faces. So that was a big, you can say, sense of achievement and satisfaction to us.
And then finally, we asked Poonam if she had anything that she wanted to share, that she thought that you guys as educators embarking on the challenge, maybe for the first time, would be helped out by hearing. And as you're going to hear, she really focuses on the need to guide your students through the challenge. It is a student-centered challenge, and we want to see students making decisions and taking charge, being able to guide the project. But as Poonam points out, there's still a need to be there to support students and to help them along the way.
The biggest challenge that we have in front of us is that we are working with teens having a very short attention span, and we have to constantly keep them motivated by showing them the good work done by other students using the resource library of Ciena. And one more thing, children need to be intellectually challenged to keep them focused. So each person is unique, and one size doesn't fit all. We have to keep challenging them in a unique way so that the best out of them comes up.
So I want to thank Poonam for taking the time to share with us today. She shared asynchronously because time zones are always a challenge, but we're so grateful to have been able to learn a little bit from their team's challenge and their experience.